Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast. This podcast is for and about first-time pilgrims walking the pilgrimage routes in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. If you are looking for your next big trip, and you love the spiritual practice of pilgrimage, then you are going to love this episode of the podcast. But it's about something that, turns out, is totally different. Hi, this is Nancy, and today I'm bringing back Chris from episode 142. It feels like the blink of an eye since I talked with Chris the last time, but in the interim, he has completed the Kumano Kodo pilgrimage in Japan, which is no small thing. So we are going to be taking a look at the similarities and differences between the Camino and the Kumano Kodo through the lens of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage is a topic I've been pondering a lot lately. As I've been creating videos for social media and exploring what topics I could talk about that aren't currently being talked about much on social media, I find myself longing to talk about these deeper topics. You know, things other than how to find the right boots and whether to use a poncho or a rain jacket. The spiritual practice of pilgrimage is near and dear to my heart. So last week, I reached out to my email list to ask if, for them, the Camino was or is a pilgrimage, and if they consider themselves to be pilgrims. I got some wonderful replies. One person shared that they were seeking something spiritual through endurance and perseverance, and hoping to be a different, stronger person at the end of the journey. Yes, they said, I think this makes me a pilgrim. Another said that the Camino definitely is a pilgrimage, but not so much geographically as it is a pilgrimage into self, and that becomes the destination that's worth the entire journey. Still another shared about a random scene in a Camino memoir that brought them to tears. They said, I don't think that was random. Something in that resonated deeply. That, to me, sounds like a pilgrim. One person shared that she prayed for the needs of her family as she walked intentionally, and for her, the Camino was a pilgrimage. Here's how someone else described it. This is the journey of a pilgrim, a daily walk with God by my side, sometimes actually holding my hand for the strength I need to take the next step. Was this life-changing? It definitely was. I came home a different person with a different purpose. And this from my buddy Paul, who you met here on the podcast in episode 123. He said this, my first Camino was not a pilgrimage, at least not in the beginning. Mostly because I didn't even understand what that meant. My second Camino with family and friends was a little more of a pilgrimage, although as I think back on it, my focus was mostly on just making sure that they were enjoying it. He continues, my third Camino on the Portuguese route was most definitely a pilgrimage, not in a religious sense, but in a sense of me being there looking for something. I was hoping, he says, that the Camino would teach me what it was I was looking for. And I think I found it in the experience of comunitas that I found there with my fellow pilgrims. I found a sense of belonging that I was seeking. He concluded by saying this, I do consider myself a pilgrim, and have felt that way since a few days into my first Camino. Now, I share these thoughts with you to cue up Chris's stories of the pilgrimage in Japan and to bring us back to what is at the heart of the journey to Santiago de Compostela. It's something that sometimes gets lost in the social interactions along the way and the copious bottles of wine at the shared dinners. And that is that in origin, the Camino de Santiago is a religious pilgrimage to the sacred shrine of the Apostle James. Is that James who is entombed in the cathedral in Santiago? Well, scholars now think no, but that's not really the point. The point is that a pilgrimage is a journey to a sacred center, a place that people agree is holy. So that's the context for my conversation with Chris. We will be comparing and contrasting the Camino de Santiago and the Kumano Kodo, and, I believe, discovering that the only thing the two have in common is that they are both pilgrimages. Let's say hello to Chris. I am delighted to welcome back to the podcast Chris, who was here just a few episodes ago, sharing with us his experience on the Portuguese route and the Frances route, and we've got a new story to tell. Chris, welcome back.
Hi, how you going, Nancy? Nice to be here.
I'm so happy you agreed to come back. We alluded to this in your first episode, and that was that as we were recording that, you were about to head to Japan to walk a pilgrimage there. Will you remind us the name of that pilgrimage?
Yeah, it was only a few days, I think, before I left. It's a Kumano Kodo
Okay.
in Japan. Yeah,
And that's a sister pilgrimage to the Camino de Santiago, yes?
yeah. So I think they're the only two walks, the St. James Way and the Kumano Kodo, that are UNESCO have the UNESCO rating. So they're both very old, and they're sister walks because of that, I think, and they have similar ideas and similar cultural heart to them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to dig into all of that because I know that there are people who listen to this podcast who have heard of it, who have walked one of the Camino routes and are now thinking, what am I going to do next? And in fact, I went to my La Terraza community, people who have already walked the Camino, and I said, all right, guys, what questions do you want me to ask Chris about this pilgrimage? So I got a stack of questions for you. And
Perfect.
hopefully it won't feel like an interrogation, but we're going to try to cover some ground here and just see if this becomes a reality for people.
Wonderful. That's
All
great.
right. Let's do a quick reminder of the Camino de Santiago routes that you've walked. Would you just do a brief refresh on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did the 23 in the winter. I did the Frances from
Hmm.
Saint Jean all the way through to Santiago. Then I did about 7, 8 months later in August. I did the Portuguese from Porto up to Santiago and then on to Finisterre. And then through that and through hearing about the Japanese Kumano Kodo, I was like, yeah, okay, well that's going to be on the list as well. So we decided to do that because there's that unique dual pilgrim certificate that you can get at the end of that. Not just because of the certificate, but it's quite a unique honor to be able to do them both because
Mm.
of that sisterhood of the cities.
Okay, so we'll build up to that and we'll hit that at the end. What is that actual dual pilgrimage significance?
Sure.
But let's get the pen in the map on this one. What is this pilgrimage and where is it located?
It's located in Japan. It's sort of southeast in the Kii Peninsula, the one I did. We started in a town called Tanabe. There's a few different routes, very similar to the Way of St James. You've got your different routes from different places: the Frances, the Portuguese,
Hmm.
the Inglés. There's about probably 7 or 8 major routes in Japan, Kumano Kodo. The one that's probably the heaviest or most traditional, I think, is called the Imperial Walk, is the Nakahechi, or I don't know. And I'm going to say off the bat, I'm probably going to pronounce everything Japanese wrong. I don't speak Japanese. I don't want to offend anyone with that. So anything that I say culturally that's wrong, I'm sorry about that. I apologize in
Okay,
advance.
we'll do a blanket
Yeah,
forgiveness.
yeah,
The guy's heart's in the right place, so let's just go with
absolutely,
that.
absolutely, yeah.
All right, so is the Imperial Walk the one that you did?
Yeah, that's the one I did. So
Okay.
you start in Tanabe. It's a little stepping off place, very similar maybe to Saint Jean, Pied de Port, and then from there you catch a bus to Takahiri, which is where you start the walk. You can walk, you can catch buses. It's not as strict from a point of view of walking the kilometres. There's parts that you have to walk, especially walking into the final, the Grand Shrine in Hongu, Taisha. That is a must walk. But once you've sort of got onto it, there's lots of little side quests because there's beautiful little shrines to visit. There's wonderful historic places. So you can do little side quests. So when I say you walk, 15 kilometres a day, you might walk more than that if you're going in some of these side quests, or less.
Okay, so we've got a lot to unpack here. So lots and lots. So let's start with the requirement to complete the pilgrimage. So we know on the Camino de Santiago, the requirement is 100 kilometers with the final stage arriving at the cathedral in Santiago. And that allows you to get the Compostela if you express a religious or spiritual motivation.
Sure.
What are the requirements to receive the certificate for this one?
Well, strangely, it is only the last probably 12 to 15 kilometres into Hongu, in the Hongu Taisha, because it's about the spiritual cleansing to arrive at the shrine. And the walks can go for hundreds of kilometres, and they were traditionally emperors and all their guards and everyone moving towards these shrines. But the final the final tick of approval, if you like, for the pilgrim is only a short distance. There's 3 grand shrines, and if you visit all 3 grand shrines, that's where you get the most spiritual gifting, if you like. So it's a little bit of a different idea to Santiago, which is the final spot. Hongu Taisha is probably the final spot, but the Nashi Taisha and the Hayatama shrine also, they're the grand shrines in this area.
Okay. And so it sounds like the purpose of this pilgrimage is for spiritual blessing. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's definitely very connected to the earth because of the religion, the Shinto religion. Shin meaning God or being, and to meaning path or the way. So it's a way to enlightenment. It's a way to your God, and so the path, the pilgrimage, is very similar to St. James' way, that way. But it's maybe a little more fractured. There's more different routes you can take. There's more different ways you can get there. And of course, you don't have to do the 100 Ks as such. But the other thing to remember here is there's no certificate for walking the Nakahechi or any of these. There's no certificate for the normal day-to-day walker. There's only the dual pilgrim certificate.
Oh, interesting.
So you don't go there to get a certificate for specifically the Kumano Kodo. You only go there to get a dual pilgrim certificate. It's a bit of a different mental shift there.
Okay, so let's think about that. If I'm someone who has not walked the Camino, and maybe I live in Japan and this is significant, would I go on this pilgrimage for strictly spiritual reasons to visit the shrines?
Yeah, absolutely. But you can, so you can collect the stamps. There's stamps along the way as well, stamps at certain shrines. And then down the track, maybe one day you'll go and do a Camino in Spain, and there's both sides on the credential. One side is the Kumano Kodo, one side is the Way of St. James, and you can get them, and then you can get the dual pilgrim then. But you could do it purely as a spiritual journey and not worry about the stamps. But I think they're a nice little memento along the way as well.
Sure. Okay, and so what this brings up for me too is what are the reasons that modern pilgrims are walking the Camino de Santiago? Are they walking for spiritual reasons? Are they walking for the religious reasons held out by the Catholic Church, which is the plenary indulgence? And not being Catholic, I can't go into too much depth on that, but I'll do a little research and put it in the introduction. And the reason that the pilgrimage began was because people were visiting what were believed to be the remains of St. James, and visiting the relics of a saint was a very significant thing in the Catholic tradition. So now, why are people walking the Camino de Santiago?
It's a great question. I think we've talked about this before, and there's a percentage that are doing it for spiritual. There's a percentage that are doing it because they like to walk. Then there's other people that may be doing it from more of a tourist point of view. And I think that's the same on the Kumano Kodo. There's definitely people, there's a lot of Japanese that do it very for a spiritual reason. And I think the Japanese are the highest number doing it. But then there's a lot of Chinese and Koreans and Taiwanese that can't choose to come. And then down the bottom there's the Australians and the Americans and the Europeans. So there's not as many as you think.
Okay, because you Australians are out in the world. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up the question then of who you met on the trail, and was the social aspect an important aspect of this pilgrimage? Because we could observe that it's a very important part of the Camino for many people.
No, so that's a really good question. I was very lucky to walk it with Mel, my partner, and you don't find the same amount of contact, and that's partly because I don't speak Japanese
Hmm.
or Taiwanese, and so people are a little bit more distant. There is sort of some groups going as well because it's quite hard to organise the Monaco accommodation. They don't really keep accommodation in the towns where the walk is. They try to push it out of the towns, so they keep the towns very culturally secure. So they're not changing them much.
Mm.
So that way, there's not a lot of options for you. There's not really hotels and things like that you can just walk into. You can't easily go to booking.com and find something. There's not really albergues or those sort of things. You do a lot of homestays. And so you get to meet, I mean, we had the beautiful homestays where we met these wonderful people and stayed in their houses and had this most amazing food experience that, we couldn't replicate, and staying in onsens and things like that. So onsen being like a spa because it's so tectonic there. There's a lot of hot water springs and that sort of thing. But it's very different that way. So you don't really meet people the same way. You don't really have a Camino family. You will see. We certainly saw people in different towns, but we didn't stay with them. So you were always. It's a bit like doing the Frances, but staying in hotels, I guess. So you would not necessarily every night. You'd maybe have dinner with yourself and then sleep with yourself. You probably get a good night's sleep, but it's a little bit different. Right? You'd have to actually physically organise a group, maybe like when you're walking with your group,
Hmm.
but not. Harder to pick up a Camino family, I think, in Japan.
Okay. And did you feel that that was something that you wanted or that you missed?
No, I didn't feel that. I mean, I was lucky I was traveling with someone, this particular one. So if I had been by myself, yeah, possibly I think it would have been a little bit more lonely. But I quite like being by myself anyway. So that probably wouldn't have been a problem for me, but it might be for someone else. So it's
Okay.
something to be aware of, I think. Definitely, there's not a lot of English speakers on the walk when we did it.
Okay. Would you attribute that to the season that you were there, or just that it maybe isn't attracting English speakers yet?
Yeah, I don't think it's attracting English speakers as much
Hmm.
as others. But we were there, and they were saying it was high season, so like the mid November when we were walking, and it was beautiful weather. It was autumn, so the leaves were turning. It was stunning scenery. The mountains are
Mm.
amazing. Everything fell into place for the weather. We had just perfect walking days, and I think it's nothing to do with the time of year. I just think maybe it's not as well known. And look, even the numbers of the dual pilgrim, you'll see that there's just not the numbers of people doing it.
Hmm.
I think there's something like 4 a day on average completing it,
Hmm.
which
Okay.
is not a lot.
Well, and probably that's appropriate given the infrastructure, would you say? I mean, what's the
Yeah,
infrastructure like for this?
another good question. So the infrastructure is not there the same way that it is. You can walk into these towns and you can definitely find something to eat, but you probably won't find anywhere to stay. So you'll have to have that pre-arranged, pre-organized. And once again, I don't speak Japanese. I certainly don't read Japanese, so it's very difficult once you get out of Tokyo or Osaka into the smaller towns. It's very hard to decipher exactly what a sign might say or where to go or what to do. So Google Translate all the way, please. Download that. That was so helpful. Sometimes we're like, okay, we don't even know what that sign's telling us. So
Could be the bathroom, could be the supermarket. We're just not
that's
sure.
exactly right. So with Spanish, you can sort of it's a little bit phonetic sometimes.
Sure.
You can work out what's going on. Absolutely nothing like that in Japanese.
Oh, yeah. Well, the characters are different. So at least with
Yeah,
Spanish, you can begin to recognize. I know those letters and I've seen them in
yeah,
that order before.
yeah,
And so you're okay. But yeah, with Japanese characters, it's a completely different set of
yeah,
rules.
yeah, yeah. Having said that, I don't think I've ever come across people that are kinder and gentler and more welcoming. And when we would stay in a homestay, the hosts were so beautiful and so kind and just absolutely do anything they can to help. And I found that everywhere in Japan, people are very, very. If you stand in a train station and you look confused for about 20 seconds, someone's going to come up to you and ask to help you or where you're going or whatever. So they will help you and they'll walk out of their way to do anything for you. Culturally, absolutely amazing, wonderful place to visit.
It sounds amazing. All right. Well, we've covered a lot of ground already. I've got starting to get a picture in my mind of what this might be like. Let's go back to the walking itself. How
Yeah,
long was the route that you walked, and how many days did you take?
from start to finish, we were about 7 days, but we couldn't walk all of that because, and this is part of the problem, we couldn't book accommodation. It just wasn't available for a couple of those nights, so we had to take buses. And this is, you have to go on a website. And when you do a bit of research, there's a website called the Kumano Travel website. It's a community based website run by the government where you put your requests in for where you want to stay. And then they contact the people and get back to you. And it can take 6 weeks to find out where you're staying. So we probably walked about 60 kilometres, but if it was 60 kilometres across the Meseta, it would be one thing. But this is literally straight up and down. There's no flat paths at all. So, point of view of walking, it's like hitting the Pyrenees every day.
Oh my goodness.
And it's hard. And there's on the Frances, there's a lot of rocks, there's a lot of there's a lot of tree roots
Mm,
on the Kumano Kodo. So there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of tree roots, a lot of trip hazards, and it's straight up every day and straight down and straight up again and straight down.
goodness.
Lots of mountains. I mean, and that makes it particularly beautiful. And
Sure.
the scenery and the trees and the lookouts and some of those things are stunning. But it's certainly a lot going up and down. We carried smaller backpacks. We carried all our stuff. I'm not sure if you can do sort of transfers. I'm sure you can, but I didn't really look into that.
Okay.
But you don't need to carry as much there. You just carry fairly light. I mean, you need to carry probably a little bit more water because it's not available the same way it is in Spain. But yeah, a lot of vending machines in the town, so that's always good. If the shops are shut, there's always a vending machine with a snack or a.
What do they sell out of the vending machines?
Well, you can get sodas or waters and things like that. But you can generally get a beer as well at the end of the day out of the vending machine. But yeah, lots of. I don't know if you've been to Japan, but Japan has the most wacky, interesting snacks. You don't even know quite what they are when you're eating them, but no, they're really interesting snacks. Go to a 7-Eleven, they have a lot of 7-Elevens and they sell great sandwiches and things like that, but they have a third of it will be wacky snacks that you really don't know.
Okay.
Maybe taste like shrimp.
Oh,
Really nice. Yeah,
oh, shrimp. Okay. The shrimp candy bar.
yeah, probably more savory than sweet, but they're just these interesting snacks.
Okay. All right. So having walked the Camino, have a picture in my mind that you are walking from town to town to village to town. And you walk in, and a typical Spanish town is going to have a couple places to stay, maybe a small food shop and a bar. What did you find in the towns along this route?
Yeah, it's certainly not like that. They're just not the bars, not the ability to do that same thing. It's very hard to get a um, well, it's almost impossible to get a gin and tonic. It's very hard to.
Okay, hold on a second. We just lost half the population here. Then we're not going.
You can get a gin and tonic, but it's not. It's just harder. Like it's a different type of bar type setup. So when you walk into a town, you probably wouldn't easily find somewhere to go and have coffee straight away. In fact, Tanabe, where it starts, we were joking about a friend of mine who had done it said, "Look, be careful because you might not get food easily in Tanabe. It's a decent sized town, but everything's shut at certain times, and other times, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it. But
Mm.
it's not like siesta time, and you don't quite know when you go into a restaurant what they sell, and then of course you can't read the menu. So you have to take a few leaps of faith, and I
Okay.
think always carry some snacks with you, something that you might recognise, and and plenty of water. And look, you'll be okay. There'll be shops, but they're quite different.
Yeah. So, what I love about this conversation is we are exposing that the Camino is not the standard for pilgrimage in the world, right? So, pilgrimage exists in every religious tradition all over the world. You've got the Kumela in India, the Hajj in the Islamic tradition, and
Mm,
those look nothing like the Camino, especially our modern day image of the Camino family as seen in the movie The Way. And we're going to
yeah,
walk, 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 stop at a bar, walk, walk, stop at a bar, walk, stop at a bar, sleep, walk, sleep. That isn't actually what pilgrimage is. That's what
that's
the
right.
Camino has become.
No, that's a really great description of it. And once again, the Kumano Koda is nothing like that either. It's it's beautiful in its own way, and you will visit a lot of shrines. You get used to maybe being more in touch with your gentler spiritual side
Mm.
and respecting the way that they come together in shrines that are fairly much always open because
Mm.
they're more open air. So I found a lot of when I was walking in winter in Spain, most churches, the cathedrals were open, but the most churches were closed. So
Hmm.
you didn't have that access. You had, it was a nice facade, but you couldn't go in. Whereas the shrines are generally always open, so they're much more accessible, I guess. So
Hmm.
that's an interesting sort of different spirituality take for different people. Yeah, and they're normally on top of a hill. So
Of course they are.
yeah.
You have to earn your blessing.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! The Hongu Teisha is right upstairs. They're
Right up
beautiful.
there.
It's stunning, but yeah, it's absolutely right up.
Ah, well, that tells me that the purpose of this pilgrimage really is to visit these shrines and to be immersed in the spirituality and the religion.
You can't avoid it, right?
Yeah.
It's everywhere on all the stops, all the stamps are at OGs or small shrines or larger shrines, which is very similar. Where they don't really have like you don't go into a bar and get a stamp
Hmm.
in Japan. That's just not what they do. They could start doing that. I don't know, but they don't do that currently.
So walk me through the stamps and what you get stamped in and where you get the stamps.
So when you start for the Nagahechi, you start in Tanabe and you go into the little visitor center there, and you'll get a free credential, very similar to what we get in Spain. And as I said to you before, one side is the Kumano Kodo, one side is the Way of St. James, and you would then they'll give you, I think, your first step there, and then you go to Takahira. For us, it was the next day, and that's the walking part starting. and you'll get another stamp there. And then the stamps are they're housed in a little, like a wooden uh, box shelter. They just
Hmm.
sit there next to the shrine somewhere. You can just have to look around. It's a little bit like, where's Wally? You got to find it. It's there somewhere, and you go and find it, put the stamp in. But even on the map that they give you, they tell you where the stamps are.
Okay.
And there's there's probably 18 stamps on the route that we took, and you slowly get those stamps, and they're lovely stamps. They're like everything else. They're really, it's really nice to get them and see them growing in number in your
Mm.
credential. And then of course, when you finish in Hongrie, there's a heritage centre there that you go into, and they'll have a look at your documents. They'll look at your uh, Camino de Santiago, and they'll look at your Kumano Kodo, and then they'll stamp them with the finished ones, and you'll be given the dual pilgrim.
Okay. So did you have to take with you your Compostela or your credencial from the Camino?
Well, we did, yeah. It was very confusing whether you needed to take them or not. It looks like, having read a bit more and spoken to other people, that you could get away possibly with like photographs or copies of them, but we weren't sure of that. And so we took the originals,
Mm.
which is, I don't love traveling with the OGs, but, you know, but that's okay. We wrapped them up nice, and we kept them in a cylinder, and they did take them out and look at that. So, you
Mm.
know,
Mm. What was that moment like?
I was really proud of that. I was really pleased that it felt like it was it was another step in just saying, okay, that's a really nice bracket on pilgrimage to do it in two different countries with two very different cultures and two very different walks, but um, they recognize each other, and that's what I really like, because they had this Santiago de Compostela and Cannabis have a partnership. Santiago looks, because it's the furthest west, it sees the sunset, and Cannabis, because it's the furthest east, if you have a look on a
Mm.
map, it sees the sunrise, and they look at
Okay.
they have the sun as their sort of emblem
Mm.
for the dual pilgrim. And there's only, I think, 14,000 people have completed that in 10 years.
Mm.
So there's not a lot of people doing it, and certainly not a lot of Westerners.
Okay. If you had to forecast, do you think that this is going to be an up and coming pilgrimage that Camino pilgrims are going to flock to?
Look, I think it will, but they also, as I said before, the combination is fiercely protected, so it's very difficult unless they change. Maybe if they built some albergues or something similar, it's very difficult to get more people onto that walk and have them stay somewhere, because you can't camp. You're not allowed to
Hmm.
put a tent up anywhere. I mean, you could probably possibly do that, but not officially. It will change and it will get busier, but I don't. It'll never reach the heights of 500,000 people a year or that sort of thing.
Pretty unrealistic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not going to do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm getting a good picture here. So let's talk about the accommodations. How did you arrange those?
So through that website that I told you about, Kumano Travel website, the community-based one, and you can do it. You can do it a few different ways. You can go through. There's a company, I think, called Raw, who will organise it for you. And that's obviously an added cost, and that can be quite expensive. But if you go through the other one, the government one, you just look at the dates you want to leave. You look at the accommodations, and you sort of tick, and you give them one to, I think it's first, second, and third choice, and then you put this big form in, and you just wait, and they'll get back to you. And it took a few weeks for them to get back to us, but then they said, well, you didn't get your first choice there, but you got your second choice and your
Mm.
third choice there. And some places will have food and some places won't have food, but you'll know that straight off the bat. And a couple of places that we had stayed that had food, they were that food was like next level amazing. It might be 8 to 10 courses, and small servings of amazing Japanese food. And one particular lady that we stayed with, the food there was just, it was Michelin star. Amazing, amazing food. And she was just cooking in a little kitchen by herself. And so, yeah, and then you have your traditional Japanese futons.
Okay.
Some of the combinations you can get Western style combination, but we sort of chose the Japanese style. And you have obviously the shoes. You take your shoes off when you enter, and you have house slippers. And if you go to the bathroom, you have bathroom slippers. And it's very, it's very organized.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always had a great sleep and always had great food and scenery. You know, you sit outside and you could have a glass of wine, and wine's nice and accessible, so that's good. You can get that at 7-Eleven. So you can have a wine and just enjoy and talk about the day. Yeah,
All right. So, timeline wise, you submitted this to the website and it took them, you said, about 6 weeks to get back to you.
correct.
When was that relative to when you were going? Was this 3 months out, 6 months out, a year out?
The website says that you can't book it under 3 months, but we met people that did, and in fact, if you left it to 3 months, you were probably going to miss out.
Hmm.
I would highly recommend that you try to book things 12 months out, just
Okay.
as far as you can, because it takes a while to organise. And yeah, it wasn't easy. And I think part of it is, when you've got websites in another language and they've been translated, they don't translate exactly how we would speak.
The grammar kind of gets set aside and we
Yeah,
recognize words and
yeah.
innuendos and things like that.
That's right. So it's
Yeah.
quite difficult. I think we spent one day, a full day, just trying to organise, 5 nights accommodation, and
Hmm.
that's probably a little bit frustrating. And that's why people are drawn towards. There's some other websites that will just go, "Hey, this is what I'm going. This is what I want to do. Please organise it," and they'll
Okay.
do it, but they'll charge you a lot of
Charge you
money for
for it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. All right. So, in terms of costs, then, could you put a round number on how much it costs for you to do this in terms of food and accommodation?
Yeah, that's a good question. Food is surprisingly cheap in Japan. We went out some nights, and you might have a main meal for 7 or 8 Australian dollars, which is probably $5 US.
Ah,
But you could also go, you could have a Wagyu steak for $150 if you wanted to, right? So it's a land of sort of this juxtaposition extremes. Some things are really expensive. They do such an incredible job of growing strawberries and cantaloupes and things like that, but they
hmm.
only grow a few of them. So, like a strawberry might cost you $5 for one strawberry, and a cantaloupe might cost you $15.
Oh my
But
gosh.
they'll be the most amazing cantaloupe you've ever eaten.
It'll be a religious experience.
Oh, absolutely. We bought some strawberries and sat and we had a bit of a prayer meeting over the strawberries sort of thing. It was not
It was a
quite, but
moment.
it's yeah. You, but if you want ramen or you want a nice meal, you can pay next to nothing for it. So there's a lot of extremes.
Okay.
So the accommodation generally on the walk will come with food, or you can choose a food package as well, which will include breakfast and that sort of thing. And you're probably looking at per person, you're probably looking at about $120 a night or something. So it's not necessarily cheap. That's Australian, so it's probably about 70 or 80 US.
Okay.
It's not cheap, but what you're getting is a full experience. You're getting a
Hmm.
place to sleep, you're getting amazing food, and you're getting, generally they'll pick you up and drop you off from the finishing point of the walk in the town. So most of these the homestays are sort of just out of town somewhere. You can walk to them, or if it's a little bit too far. One of them was too far. They just come and pick you up. You ring when you're ready, and they come and get you. It's just a different way of doing it. So it's a different mindset. So if you don't go with the mindset of Spanish type Camino, just
Hmm.
change that mindset
Mm.
and just give yourself over to the idea that it's just going to be different. It's like
Mm.
you said before, it's like going Hajj or something like that. It's just a different experience. And they're both called pilgrimages, but they're both, I bet you if I cooked a curry and you cook a curry, they're going to be different curries, right?
Definitely. It's really apples and oranges.
Yeah,
Yeah. And again, I'm thinking of other pilgrimages and other world religions like the Kumela in India. That is a pilgrimage that looks nothing like the Camino. It's
no,
nothing. The Hajj is nothing like the Camino. And it's a pilgrimage of a major world religion.
yeah,
Yeah. So it brings me back when I think of pilgrimage, I think of that inner journey and the rituals and traditions that go along with it. That's the
yeah,
pilgrimage. And the word Camino is being used interchangeably with pilgrimage, but it's not necessarily the same thing.
yeah. No, you're right. And I think you can define the reason you're doing something and then relax into that. What I mean is, if you want to be a tourist on the Kumano Kodo and you want to just go for a walk and see some nice things, you can absolutely do that. That's
Hmm.
very easy. If you do want to have a spiritual, uh, even though it's not your own religion, but you can still have a spiritual experience within the ideas of another religion. You
Hmm.
can absolutely have that, and it's very easy to have that because it's centered on shrines and centered on religious past religious sites.
Mm.
I sort of maybe I'm a bit of a mix of both of those, but I really enjoyed the calmness of the shrines and the calmness of the people visiting the shrines.
Mm.
It was similar, but um, but removed from more the Catholic idea of a pilgrimage.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine just in structure and tone, it's going to be a little bit different. The
Hmm.
rituals, the traditions are different. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So after the Camino, people go home and often have sort of a tough time reintegrating, transitioning from the rhythm of the Camino and the simplicity of the days on the Camino. What was your return home like from this pilgrimage?
Yeah, it's interesting because we it was sort of in the middle of a couple of the trip, like as in like we went to Tokyo, Osaka beforehand, and then we went to Kyoto and Hiroshima afterwards. And so it was sort of it wedged in the middle there. But they do talk about that even from a Japan point of view. Japan is so culturally different.
Hmm.
So the walk for us was maybe not as because it wasn't surrounded by other people. We didn't have that loss when we left a Camino family. We had the experience with each other, so we could debrief and talk that through. So I think that made it easier, and maybe that would be the smarter way to do a Kimono Kodo is do it with someone so that you have them to bounce off and
Okay.
to problem solve with. Because I think there was a lot of that. Sometimes Mel was able to think something through in a different way that I was, and I think makes it that makes it more enjoyable. But because Japan is so organized and so wonderfully there, present all the time, you can get anything you want. I think when you come away from that, even as a country, you go, wow, okay, we're not quite up to that standard yet in Australia.
We're very messy.
I mean, talking about one pilgrim mentality issue we had, they Japanese people line up for everything. They'll line up and they're wonderful and they'll wait and they're patient. And I found though that on the Kimono Kodo, sometimes you would have to take a bus because you literally couldn't walk somewhere. You would line up and there was literally painting on the thing. But if the bus didn't pull up to the right spot, that just confused everything, right? So if the door is there and the bus pulls up in the wrong spot, then the people would start getting onto the back, and that just threw everything out. So it's the pilgrims there are very good at following rules unless the rules fall down. Yeah,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
yeah, so it makes
Okay.
sense.
Don't pull the rug out from under us.
No, 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 no. And the other thing to be aware of, that I didn't realize that when you get your little Camino shell, when you start your walk, there's little bells on it, and I was like, oh, that's sweet little jingle bells you might see on a Christmas decoration or something, only little ones. And later on, we sort of found out that they're actually the descriptive of the bigger bells you're supposed to carry because there's bears.
Oh, I'm sorry. What? There are bears?
I know. we didn't see any bears, and I don't think you're going to see any bears because there's people making a lot of noise.
Okay.
But there is bears in Japan, and there is bears. Traditionally, in the old pilgrimage days, they did carry bigger bells just to ward off any bears.
I'll carry a bell.
There's no bear attacks down in that area. I know there's been bears sighted up north or whatever, but I don't think there's much down in the south where all the pilgrims are walking. They make a lot of noise. And people do carry bigger bells. So
Oh
I
my
did notice that.
goodness.
Yeah.
Well, and that reminds me to ask, you said you pick up a shell. Is it similar to the scallop shell on the Camino? Is it that symbol that you carry, or what's the purpose?
The symbol they do use a shell, but is the three-legged crow. The crow was said mythically said to guide the emperor to Hungry Taisha. So the crow, I think it's got three legs because it's heaven, earth, and man, and how they're all joined.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah, it's a symbol of. I think they use it in a few different places. That symbol, but they put it on the dual pilgrim as well as against the shell of the Way of St James, and the shell's widely recognised. Absolutely.
Hmm. Fantastic. All right. Well, you've given me lots to research and think about and look into and find friends to go do this with. It sounds really fascinating. Is there anything else to share about this, but I just haven't asked the right question yet?
I think right at the end, when you finish and you go to the the Hugutaisha, the beautiful big grand shrine, there's a beautiful ceremony that only people who are dual pilgrims get to do, and a representative of the shrine will take you and walk you up to the side of the shrine to an area where you're not allowed to go normally, and there's a huge drum there, and you get to beat the drum as what they sort of called it. It's an expression of your thoughts and feelings, so that you can beat it however you want and whatever rhythm you want, and you can not going to get told off, and not for very long, mind you. It's pretty quick. They'll get you out of there. But I think it was explained to me like it's an experience of the body to complete your spiritual journey. So you get to do your spiritual journey, and then you do something with your body at the end to
Physical.
show that you've done it. Yeah, and that was a really nice thing, and it's obviously very rare, and
Mm.
it was quite meaningful. And then yeah, so I really enjoyed that.
So they do that for anyone who's a dual pilgrim, no matter when you arrive, no matter when you complete the pilgrimage, or is it only on special days?
No, it's whenever you do. Obviously, maybe opening hours, as in like
Okay,
when the
fair,
administration is there. So
fair enough.
probably 9 to 5. But yeah, if you arrived late at night, the shrine would be accessible, but you wouldn't be able to go and do the drum.
Okay.
Weirdly enough, it's quite convoluted. And once again, it goes back to not speaking Japanese, but we beat the drum before we got the certificate. And that was because of their lack of communication between them and us. But they
Hmm.
saw all our other papers out and they thought that we'd already done that. But we did it around the wrong way, which is sort of funny. But yeah, that was a really special. I think it's called a Teiko ceremony, but
Mm.
worth reading. Read about it some more, and it's unique, and I think it felt really nice to do that.
I love it. So you've mentioned the language thing a couple of times. Was there any English spoken, or was it really a Google Translate experience?
There's not much English spoken once you're out of the main cities,
Hmm.
and in the smaller towns. It definitely, when we were picking up our dual pilgrimage, that sort of thing, people working in government administration offices generally spoke English, so you didn't have a problem there. But the smaller places, definitely the homestays, wasn't any English there, or a lot of the stores, a lot of point if you want something, same thing as everywhere else, right? Yeah, I didn't find it to be you couldn't get what you wanted, but you just had to do a bit more work and with Google Translate and there's someone around. Often, as I said, if you look confused enough, someone's going to.
Someone will rescue.
Well, generally a uni student or either younger people definitely speak English, so they'll point you in the right direction. Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, this is fascinating. And both do and don't hope that this brings a surge of people to go walk this pilgrimage. I would love for people to have this incredible experience. And also, let's not be responsible for ruining it, right?
No, no, I don't look. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they've sort of made it difficult enough so that
Okay.
it's not going to open any floodgates, and that's probably a good thing, you know. But it's also a little bit frustrating when you don't know the ins and outs. So there's a Facebook group, Kumano
Okay.
Kodo Planning. It's called Kumano Kodo Planning, and that is of really helpful information
Okay.
for anyone thinking of doing it.
All right. Well, like I said, this is absolutely fascinating. What is next on your to-do list, your travel to-do list?
Oh my goodness, we're going to Egypt and Jordan later this year,
Wonderful.
and Poland, and want to try to see some things over there that I've been looking at National Geographic books since I was like 3 years old. I think going, oh my goodness, I got to see some of that Egypt stuff.
Well, your face just lights up when you talk about what's to come on the travel agenda. So, yeah, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. I really appreciate it. And I'm inspired and interested in doing this. So, thank you.
Wonderful, no problems at all. I love talking to you.
Well, if you get on another pilgrimage, let's touch base again and we'll hear more stories.
Will do.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks,
Thanks so
Nancy.
much. Bye.
Bye.